A very warm welcome back to the Nutrition Collective events. We're an educational platform focusing on providing healthcare practitioners with cutting-edge knowledge around chronic disease. I am Lucia, and I'm really looking forward to interviewing Professor Walter Longo. He's a professor of gerontology and biological sciences and the director of a longevity institute at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, which is one of the leading centers for research on aging and age-related disease. Dr. Longo is also the director of the Longevity and Cancer Program at the Institute of Molecular Oncology in Milan, in Italy. Today, with this interview, we're gonna looking at some key areas of his research of the longevity diet and the fast mimicking diet and their impact on prevention on chronic disease. And also, we're gonna ask some highlights on his work for his no-profit foundations. So, welcome, Walter. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Shall we start immediately? We already have some questions. We are quite familiar with the Mediterranean diet, but we know that you have researched a lot and specialized in the longevity diet. Can you please explain us what are the differences between those two diets and the highlights of those two diets?
The Mediterranean diet obviously is based on lots of things, but started with Ansel Keys and based on the southern Italian, particularly Campania group of people in Campania and the way they used to eat. They don't eat like that anymore, and it's got a lot of similarities with the longevity diet. So a lot of legumes. And a lot of vegetable. It's got differences with the longevity diet. For example, the longevity diet is low on fruit. The Mediterranean diet is high on fruit. The Mediterranean diet doesn't really have age-specific changes. The longevity diet changes very much between, let's say, the 0 and 20, 20 and 65, 70, 70 and above. And so the longevity diet is more based on of course, the Mediterranean diet is based on that. And what some people used to eat in the Mediterranean area, the longevity diet is based on 5 pillars. And so that's just the centenarians and not just of that part of southern Italy, but Okinawa and Loma Linda and lots of places around the world. All of that represent 1 pillar. Then there's 4 more pillars. And, so defining, for example, the longevity diet includes a 12 hours time restricted eating, 12 hours fasting, 12 hours eating, includes a fasting mimicking diet 2 or 3 times a year, includes a specific fish and not on any source of animal proteins. I mean, the Mediterranean diet is much more, you can have a fairly high amount of meat, based on most definitions, and the meat can be red and white and fish, but it's low, but it's still, in the longevity diet, there is no red meat, there is no white meat, only fish is allowed a few times a week. So it's quite different, although there are certainly lots of things in common.
Now, talking about those diets, you mentioned the fast mimicking diet, which I know it's a diet that you researched a lot. And I also wanted to ask you, what prompted you to research the fast mimicking diet and what benefits it can have on the prevention of chronic diseases, such as diabetes, cancer, and metabolic syndrome? And it also has an impact on fertility following a fast mimicking diet?
Yes, so the fasting mimicking diet, I was a student of Roy Walford back, 30 years ago, actually. And Roy was the leading person in the planet for nutrition and longevity back then. And he was working on something called calorie restriction. And calorie restriction had lots of benefits and lots of problems. Right? So calorie restriction is about 25% less calories than normal, and not 25% less than excess, but 25% less than normal. So it's quite a low calorie intake. And Walford has shown extraordinary effects for this calorie restriction, but also extraordinary problems. Let's say the weight loss, muscle loss, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so the fasting mimicking diet is the answer to that. And so the question was, is it possible that we can intervene and fast people, mice first, and then people for just say 5 days every month or so, and that will have an effect carrying over into the days where you may even have a bad Western diet. And so that was the gamble. And first it was water only fasting, then it became fasting mimicking. Why we started doing trials with cancer patients, and the cancer patient at USC Norris Cancer Center did not want to do water only fasting. And so then we went to the National Institute of Health and asked for funding for, can we come up with a diet that people can eat and have the same effects as fasting, right? And that's what the fasting mimicking diet. So it's trying to solve two problems. One, it does not want to impose to people daily changes, because most people are not going to do daily changes long term. It doesn't mean that we don't try. Of course, the longevity diet tries very hard, but so it tries to eliminate that, and then it tries to eliminate the fasting part, even in those 5 days, so that people can, have a reasonable amount of food and yet get the benefits of fasting. And so it works. So we now have about maybe 10 clinical trials, many on cancer, some on diabetes and pre-diabetes, etc. And so the data is very promising for cancer, but also starting to get to the conclusive level for diabetes and pre-diabetes with maybe 4 trials all showing the same thing: reduction of A1C, reduction of fasting glucose, and reduction of regression of the diabetes. Right, so now all the trials have shown the same, that drug use is reduced by patients, diabetic patients that are, on 4, 6, or 12 cycles of the fasting mimicking diet. All trials are showing the same. And so, very promising for diabetes and cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndrome, but also promising for cancer and for people that just want to be healthy, and maybe we haven't published yet on biological age, but that's coming up. The effect of fasting mimicking diet on the biological age of people that have done it.
Wow, this is so interesting. Thank you very much. And so, what do you believe is the most valuable dietary intervention for the prevention of chronic disease? Is the fast mimicking diet? It's having a Mediterranean style dietary regime. It's the longevity diet. What would you recommend?
Yeah, obviously, because the Mediterranean diet is considered within the longevity diet, I recommend the longevity diet, and the fasting mimicking diet is also inside of the longevity diet. So longevity diet, diet, of course, is a technical term. It has nothing to do with, eating differently to lose weight, but it has to do with, everything you eat. So what should that be? And that should be the longevity diet based on lots and lots of studies, many mine, but many by lots of other groups. And so the longevity diet considers epidemiological data, and it considers clinical studies, and it considers basic research, and then it considers, again, centenarian studies from all over the world. The Okinawa, Loma Linda, Calabria, Sardinia. So all of that is considered. So I think we need to sort of move to a smarter, more individualized idea of diet in the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet, like the calorie restriction, is simple ideas are good and bad. They tend to be very good, and of course it's very good to be on a Mediterranean diet. But we also just finished a trial showing that within 7 months on the Mediterranean diet, the average person lost 7 pounds of muscle mass, 5 pounds of muscle mass, of lean body mass, right? So, this is just one example of how just by going to an area of Italy and saying this is the best diet in the world, you're going to get good and you're going to get bad, right? The longevity diet is try to move away from ideas like that and move into, well, exactly what are we talking about? What is the level of protein? What is the level of amino acid within the proteins that at each age, and it's going to be beneficial to the person. And of course, very soon it's going to be for each person, right? Not just at each age. So we have clinics in Milan and Los Angeles for the foundation, and everything is personalized. So everybody gets a different treatment, and it should be like that, right? Because, so I think it's an evolution of a lot of these old ideas.
And the last question on the diets is because we mentioned talking about those diets, and obviously you said Mediterranean or longevity, and we're all thinking about the beautiful produce that it's in the Mediterranean area or Okinawa or California. But what if, as practitioners, we want to advise a longevity diet or a Mediterranean diet in the UK or in the US or more broadly worldwide? Would you recommend some modifications? There are some dietary products that, maybe are not easy to find in the UK because they don't grow. How can we do it?
Well, first of all, the longevity diet that was written in California, right? So, and it was written with in mind, my time in Chicago and my time in Dallas, places that probably don't have we don't have big differences with the UK, right? Let's say they have differences, but not big differences. So certainly between California, Chicago, and Dallas, a lot of the ingredients that you will see on the table of UK cities will be represented. And so it was never meant to be an Italian diet. It was meant to be as mentioned, a diet for the world. And that's why it takes from Loma Linda, it takes from Okinawa, Loma Linda, California, it takes from Okinawa, it takes from Italy, it takes from everywhere that we could get information from, including epidemiological studies, many of which were done in the UK. So it's not about a particular ingredient; it's a particular category of ingredients. So it's not about which vegetable, but vegetables, right? So, or it's not about which fruit, but fruit in general. And of course, the dietitian or the nutritionist in each country is going to have to come up with different versions.
Thank you very much, Walter. And now, since you mentioned before about your foundations in Milan and California, I know that in Milan it's the Walter Longo Foundation, and in the US you have Create Cures. Would you tell us a bit more about why you decided to found them, and what are the main activities of these no-profit foundations?
Yes, so I founded them based on what I wrote in the book, which is I didn't think that in the universities we yet have this multidisciplinary team that involves a nutritionist, a molecular biologist, a physician. And I thought that in part or a lot because I was doing that, right? I was forming teams, let's say with the oncologists, with the cardiologists, with the endocrinologists. As we move, we have many, I think we have about 30 clinical trials running right now. And so with every trial, we form this team. And so I have the dietitians or the PhD nutritionist, I'm involved. And then we have the physician, we have maybe the physician that are expert in nutrition. Then we have the physician that is specialized. And as we move forward in the clinical trial, we see how powerful that is. Like when we're together, it's just a completely different service. And I thought that's amazing that we don't have that, right? That we can build it for the clinical trial, but nobody gets to have that team strategizing, right? So what do you do and why? So that's what the foundation clinics do. And now they see about 400 patients a month between Los Angeles and Milan. And maybe half of it is cancer, and the other half is lots of other things. And so very proud of that and the way it's working. It's growing very rapidly, and we're starting to get a lot of interest from donors to keep it going, because of course it's expensive, right? So to have this team, I mean, people deserve it, but who's going to pay for it? And so I think eventually it'd be nice if governments pay for it, but thus far, we rely on donations and on my books, and the profits from the book go there, and on donations, and also of course patients pay when they can afford it. They don't pay if they cannot afford it, and so I think it's going well.
Yeah, and you mentioned books, and I know that now it's just been translated in English, the Longevity Diets book, and it's been recently launched in the UK. Can you tell us a bit about this book?
Well, no, the Longevity Diet has actually been in the UK since 2018, and in the US since 2018. Yeah, so it's been around, and it sold a lot of copies. Hopefully it'll sell some more, and 100% of my part goes to the foundations, and hopefully soon enough we'll have a foundation in London, clinic in London. We just opened in Rome, so I have Milan, Rome, and Los Angeles, and so it'd be great. So if anybody's interested in helping us build it, we would love to have one in London. But the Longevity Diet it's really about 30 years of work, of my work and the work of many, many people that I had the pleasure to working with and collaborating with. So at some point after maybe 25 years of doing this, I felt, okay, now I think I know enough to put it together in a way that, in a 5-pillar based way that I felt would not change would not change very much, right? In the next 5-10 years. And that's why I wrote it. And now it's been 5 years, was actually 7 years since the Italian version and 5 years since the English version. And I have to say, I would change very little. I would change a few things, but not very much.
Okay, that's so interesting. And which other books has your foundation published?
Well, now there's an English version of the Longevity Stable, and that's a little bit of a fundraising effort, but it's a lot of recipes from all over Italy, and that we felt that people love to eat, but so they're very tasty, and yet they match very well the Longevity Diet. And I thought it was a good effort by my team, my foundation team, to come up with over 300 recipes. And again, it's a little bit of a fundraising. It's less scientific than the first book, and much more about how do I eat like that. Again, if people in the UK probably have to make adjustment based on what they like, and hopefully working with a dietitian or nutritionist to get there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Walter. It's been great talking to you, and I have insights about your research on diet, your foundation works, and your publications. Thank you very much again. And I also want to thank you, everybody that's been watching us. And we hope we can see you in the future for our Nutrition Collective events. Please check out our website, www.nutritioncollective.co.uk, for future events, webinars, and masterclasses. And again, thank you very much, Walter.
Thank you.